The wine glass was already on the counter when I walked into the kitchen that morning, and something about the way my husband was polishing it, slow, deliberate, like he was preparing something precious, made my stomach drop before I even understood why. That was 3 days before our anniversary dinner. I didn't know yet that my daughter had already tried to warn me. Let me go back to the beginning, because none of this will make sense unless you understand what kind of woman I am. I'm 63 years old. I taught elementary school for 31 years in Davenport, Iowa. I have bad knees, a vegetable garden I'm unreasonably proud of, and until 18 months ago, I thought the worst thing that could happen to a person was losing someone they loved. I lost my daughter Noelle 7 years ago. She was 32, an aneurysm, fast, silent, no warning. She was dropping her son off at preschool and she just didn't come home. Her boy, my grandson Theo, was 4 years old. He's 11 now, and he has her eyes. That detail matters. I'll tell you why later. After Noelle passed, I did what widows and grieving mothers do. I survived. I kept her photographs on every wall. I babysat Theo every weekend while his father worked. I tended my garden, and I cried in private, and I tried very hard not to become someone my daughter would be ashamed of. Then I met my husband. His name is Sterling. Sterling Vance. He came into my life through my neighbor's retirement party. Charming, silver-haired, recently widowed himself, or so he said. He was 61 and he laughed at all my jokes, and he knew how to waltz, which I know sounds like nothing, but after years of grief, it felt like being handed a glass of water in a desert. We dated for 14 months. We got married in my backyard under the oak tree Noelle used to climb as a child. I thought I was starting over. I thought I was finally allowed to be happy again. The dream came 6 days before our first anniversary. I don't usually remember my dreams. I wake up and they dissolve like sugar in warm water. I know something was there, but I can't taste it anymore. This one was different. This one I woke from sitting straight up in bed, heart slamming, completely certain I was not alone in the room. Noelle was standing near the window. She looked the way she looked in her late 20s, before the tiredness of new motherhood had settled into her face. Her hair was loose. She was wearing the yellow cardigan I gave her for her 30th birthday, the one I still can't bring myself to donate. She looked at me with an expression I can only describe as urgent, not frightened, but urgent. Like she was running out of time to say something important. She said, "Mom, don't drink the wine." That was it. Just that. Don't drink the wine. I woke up. The bedroom was dark. Sterling was asleep beside me, breathing steadily, and I lay there staring at the ceiling for a long time, with my hands pressed flat against my chest, feeling my own heartbeat slow back down. I told myself it was grief. 7 years, and it still ambushes you sometimes. That's the thing no one warns you about losing a child. You think you've made your peace, and then your subconscious drags them back and makes you lose them all over again. I told myself the dream meant nothing. I told myself I was an old woman with an overactive imagination, and I needed to go back to sleep. I almost convinced myself. The thing is, our anniversary dinner had been Sterling's idea entirely. He'd been planning it for weeks, he said. A private dinner at home, just the two of us, wine from the cellar he'd had shipped from a vineyard in Oregon that his late wife had apparently loved. He mentioned the wine specifically, more than once. He'd said, "I found something really special for us to open that night, and at the time I thought it was romantic." He wanted to honor the occasion. He was a man who paid attention to details. After the dream, I started thinking about those details differently. I'm not a suspicious person by nature. I want to be clear about that. I'm the kind of woman who leaves her front door unlocked when she's in the garden. I give people the benefit of the doubt until they give me a very specific reason not to. But I'm also a woman who spent 3 decades managing classrooms full of 7-year-olds, and you learn, doing that job, to notice when something doesn't add up. You learn to trust the quiet feeling in your gut that says, "Look closer." So I looked closer. So it started with something small. I was in Sterling's office looking for the scissors. He'd borrowed them 2 weeks earlier and never returned them, which was its own small annoyance, and I found a folder on his desk that I wasn't looking for and wasn't meant to find. I almost put it back. The old me, the trusting me, would have put it back. Instead, I opened it. It was a life insurance policy. My name on the front. $2 million. The policy had been taken out 9 months earlier, 9 months into our marriage, and the beneficiary listed was Sterling's son from his first marriage, a son I had met exactly twice, briefly, who had seemed to look through me both times like I was a piece of furniture. His name was in the documents, Chadwick Vance, 34 years old, living in Portland. I stood in Sterling's office for a very long time holding that folder. The logical part of my brain started running through explanations. Sterling was organized. Sterling was the kind of man who planned ahead. Maybe he'd taken out life insurance on both of us. Maybe there was a matching policy for him somewhere in that filing cabinet. Maybe this was simply responsible financial planning, and I was a grieving mother who'd had a strange dream and was now connecting dots that didn't connect. I checked the filing cabinet. I went through every folder. There was no policy on Sterling's life, only mine. I put the folder back exactly as I'd found it. I found the scissors in the second drawer. I went back to the kitchen and I sat down at the table and I looked out at my garden for a long time and I thought about Noelle standing at the window in her yellow cardigan. Don't drink the wine. I didn't say anything to Sterling that night or the next day. I've always believed you should know what you're dealing with before you show your hand. Another thing 31 years in a classroom will teach you. Instead, I started paying attention in a way I hadn't let myself before. I noticed that Sterling was on his phone more than usual, but tilted away from me, or in the other room with the door almost but not quite closed. I noticed that twice in 1 week he mentioned, very casually, that I should make sure my own will was updated. Said it with a little smile, said it like it was just practical advice, like he was looking out for me. I noticed that when I mentioned calling Theo's father to have them over for the anniversary dinner, Sterling's smile went tight for just a moment before he suggested we keep it intimate. Just us. On the third day before the anniversary, I called my friend Paulette. She's 70, sharper than anyone I know, and she'd been widowed twice and had opinions about men that I'd spent most of our friendship gently disagreeing with. I told her what I'd found. I told her about the dream. I told her about the wine. There was a long silence on her end of the phone. Then she said, "You need to find out what's in that wine." I thought she was going to tell me I was being dramatic. She surprised me. Paulette's nephew is a pharmacist in Des Moines. She didn't tell me exactly what she asked him or how she framed the question, but he called me back the same evening and walked me through, in careful, general terms, exactly how certain compounds interact with a single glass of wine, how quickly they work, how they look in a glass, how difficult they are to detect unless you're specifically testing for them. I sat with that information for a long time. The day before the anniversary, I drove to a legal supply store in the next town over and I bought a small digital recorder, the kind reporters use. I charged it overnight and I practiced turning it on quickly, without looking, the way you practice anything you hope you'll never need. The anniversary dinner was a Saturday. Sterling cooked. He was a good cook. That had been one of the things I'd loved about him early on, the ease he had in a kitchen, the way he moved through it like he owned whatever room he was in. He made lamb chops with rosemary roasted potatoes, a salad from my own garden. He set the table with candles and the good china. He was warm all evening, attentive, telling me stories I'd heard before but still laughed at because he told them well. The wine came out just before dessert. He made a small ceremony of it, showed me the label, told me the story of the vineyard, poured my glass first and then his own. He lifted his glass and looked at me across the candlelight and said, "To us, to the most surprising year of my life." I lifted my glass. I smiled at him. I did not drink. I set the glass down and touched my napkin to my lips and said I wanted to wait until after dessert, that I'd always preferred wine with something sweet, and I hoped he didn't mind. He didn't push it. He just smiled and sipped his own glass, and we had the dessert he'd bought from the bakery downtown, a small chocolate torte with raspberries, and we talked about a trip to Vermont we'd been vaguely planning. He refilled my glass while I was talking. I noticed, but I didn't say anything. After dinner, he excused himself to the kitchen to clean up, which he always did. He was particular about not leaving dishes in the sink overnight. The moment I heard the water running, I reached into my cardigan pocket and I turned on the recorder. I walked to the kitchen doorway. "Sterling," I said, "I need to ask you something." He didn't turn around right away. He finished rinsing the pan he was holding, set it on the rack, then turned to face me. His expression was pleasant, expectant. "I found the life insurance policy," I said. "The one on my life. With Chadwick as the beneficiary." Something moved across his face. It was quick. Most people would have missed it. A year ago, I would have missed it myself. It was there for just a moment, a kind of recalibration, and then the pleasant expression came back. "Honey," he said, "I can explain that. That's standard estate planning." "Why is there nothing on your life?" I asked. The pleasant expression flickered again. "I haven't gotten around to Sterling." My voice was steady. I surprised myself with how steady it was. I didn't drink the wine. He went very still. The kitchen was quiet except for the faucet dripping and the refrigerator hum. He looked at me for a long moment, really looked at me differently than he had all evening, like he was adjusting to a new version of a situation he thought he understood. "What are you saying?" he said. "I'm saying I'd like to know what's in that wine," I said. "And I'd like to know why my daughter's name isn't in your filing cabinet anywhere, but mine and Chadwick's are. And I'd like to know what you and Chadwick talked about on the phone on Tuesday for 47 minutes. I hadn't planned to say that last part. But I'd seen the call log when his phone was on the counter and he'd left the room, and 47 minutes is a long time to talk to a son you claim you're not particularly close to. Something shifted in Sterling Vance in that moment. The charm left the room. He leaned back against the counter and looked at me with something cold and evaluating, like he was deciding what to do with a problem he hadn't anticipated. "You've been going through my things," he said. "I found the scissors," I said. "You can look at me that way if you want to. But I need you to understand that this conversation is being recorded, and my attorney has a sealed letter I asked her to hold, and Paulette knows exactly where I am tonight and will be calling me in 30 minutes. None of that was entirely true. Paulette was calling in 30 minutes. The rest of it I was hoping would land hard enough that he wouldn't push it. He looked at the recorder in my cardigan pocket. He hadn't noticed it before. His jaw tightened. "You're a very careful old woman," he said. The word old was a blade. He meant it as one. "I raised a daughter alone after her father left," I said. "I ran a classroom for 31 years, and I buried my child." My voice didn't shake. "I am very careful. Yes." The silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, Sterling Vance crossed his arms and started talking. He didn't confess to everything at once. People like that never do. They test you. They give you a little and see what you do with it. But he confirmed enough. The policy had been Chadwick's suggestion, and yes, there had been a conversation about what a widow's estate would mean for both of them, and yes, the wine was, he paused here, chose his words, something Chadwick had gotten for me as a gift, and he hadn't asked too many questions about it. He said that last part looking at the floor. He couldn't look at me. He was trying to give himself distance from it. He was trying to make Chadwick the one who'd crossed the line while he'd simply been incurious about a gift his son sent him to serve to his wife on their anniversary? I had everything I needed. Paulette called at exactly 30 minutes. I answered while Sterling was still in the kitchen, and I told her clearly and calmly that I needed her to call Detective Abernathy's number, which I'd written on a notepad by her landline 3 days earlier, and asked her to keep there without asking why. "I want to tell you about what happened after, because I know that's the part you're sitting with. What happened, what the consequences were, whether the ending was the one this story deserved." The wine was tested. I'd kept my glass. I'd wrapped it in a dish towel and put it in my tote bag while Sterling was in the kitchen, and whatever you think of that, a 63-year-old retired school teacher wrapping a wine glass in a dish towel at her anniversary dinner, it was the right instinct. The wine contained a compound that, in the amount poured into my glass, combined with my blood pressure medication, could have caused cardiac arrest within hours. It would have looked, most likely, like a heart attack. Chadwick Vance, it turned out, had a debt problem and a business problem, and had been telling Sterling for the better part of a year that their financial situation was critical. Sterling's late wife had left him considerably less than he'd implied. Their plan, and the detectives were able to piece this together through phone records and a text exchange that Chadwick had apparently not thought to delete, had not been impulsive. They had spent months on it. Sterling was arrested on a Sunday morning. I watched from my kitchen window when the officers came. He walked out without looking back at my house, and I stood there with my coffee going cold in my hand, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel, which was grief, not for Sterling Vance, but for the woman I'd been 14 months earlier at my neighbor's party, the one who was so grateful to be handed a glass of water that she didn't stop to wonder why someone was being so generous in a desert. Chadwick was arrested in Portland 2 days later. I won't tell you that justice is ever complete. Sterling's attorney is good and the legal process is slow, and I've learned to stop checking the case number every morning because it keeps my blood pressure up, and I've got enough going on with my blood pressure already, thank you. What I can tell you is that the evidence is solid. The text messages are solid. The compound in that wine glass is solid. And I'm still here. That matters more than I can say. I'm still here to see Theo grow up, to watch him become the young man his mother would have been so proud of. He came over last weekend and helped me stake the tomatoes, and at one point he looked up at me with Noelle's exact eyes and said, without any context, "Grandma, did something happen? You seem different." I told him I'd had a hard few months, but that I was okay, that things were going to be okay. He nodded like he believed me, and then he went back to the tomatoes, and I stood there in my garden in the afternoon sun, and I thought about Noelle in her yellow cardigan standing at the window. I don't know what to tell you about that. I'm a practical woman. I taught children to read, and I believe in evidence, and I don't make claims I can't support. But I also know what I saw in that dream, and I know that it woke me up, and I know that being woken up saved my life. Maybe there's an explanation for it. Maybe it was just my own subconscious putting together pieces I'd already noticed but hadn't let myself name. Maybe grief keeps us alert in ways that look like something else. I don't know. What I know is that I talked to Theo's father last week and we're planning Thanksgiving together. What I know is that my garden has more butternut squash than I'll ever eat, and I've been leaving bags of it on the neighbors' porches. What I know is that I'm 63 years old and I'm still here, and there are still mornings I wake up and feel the specific weight of missing my daughter like a stone in my chest, but there are also mornings, more of them lately, when I wake up and feel something lighter, something that might be gratitude. I look out at the oak tree in my backyard where I got married, and I think about how I'm going to have it taken down in the spring. A good clean cut, room for something new. My daughter used to climb that tree when she was 7 years old. She used to sit up in the branches and call down to me, "Mom, look how high I am," and I'd shade my eyes and look up and feel that particular terror that only parents know, the one that lives right next to love, that you can never fully separate from it. "I see you," I'd call back. "I see you. Be careful." I think about that a lot lately. About how love and watchfulness live in the same place. About how sometimes, if you're paying the right kind of attention, you can hear the people you've lost still trying to take care of you. I heard her. I was paying attention. And I'm still here.